A hard-won victory on the part of gender-based violence activists and sex worker activists is the inclusion of sex worker decriminalization in the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide.
Our President Cyril Ramaphosa, before he even became the President of South Africa, he had launched the National Strategic Plan on HIV for sex workers, which inside had a recommendation that decriminalization was the only route or legislation that would actually mean better health for sex workers in South Africa and reduction in transmissions of HIV and STIs, because it would mean that people are able to access freely without discrimination, without stigmatization.
On 5 June 2019, the ASIGIKI Coalition for the Decriminalization of Sex Work, its members and allies, gathered at Parliament to present the President the sunflower he symbolically gave to the Sisonke National Coordinator, Kholi Buthelezi. The sunflower was a display of his commitment to the safeguarding of sex worker human rights.
We actually initially wrote a letter to tell him that we would like to do this in honor of the sunflower which he had given. But this wasn't our first attempt to actually remind him, because we had tried to remind him at the 2018 International AIDS Conference that happened in Amsterdam, where Kholi took the same sunflower which we had been keeping safe and it had dried out, and we framed it, handed it back to him and said, it's time to return the promise that you actually said. So last year we actually made a whole big sculpture of a sunflower, and we wrote to him and we said, we'd like to actually present this to you as a reminder of your promise to sex workers, but also as a reminder to yourself that you said you are going to protect us. There are 154,000 or 184,000 estimated South African sex workers that need you to keep your promise. He has not responded.
The Sex Work Promise indicated a path in legislation that recognizes the human rights of sex workers with access to equal rights under the South African Constitution. In a world where sex work is decriminalized, sex workers could follow the same recourse offered to every person in South Africa without added stigma.
I believe it can be reduced if Ramaphosa keep his promise, if the sex worker should be decriminalized, and the community, the people, they will start respecting the sex workers, and the sex workers will be registered in the labor laws. The sex workers who work in brothel, they'll also get contracts like any other employees and benefit like any other employees.
This actually, it was unexpected, I think, a pandemic that it came into the country, and for sex workers specifically, it is also another, I would say it's another burden that is added to, on top of the HIV, and especially in our community, the stigma and discrimination, it is something that is taking place. So the COVID also, it's added on top of that, because in some provinces we have heard and been informed that sex workers, when they access healthy facilities, they've been told by the nurses that they're bringing COVID to the clinic. So those are some of the challenges. But for Swearing Sisonke and partners, the press release also was written to call government to recognize the sex workers, and also in terms of relief. Then there were also partners, I think, that I must say to thank them, that I can't mention because my time is just limited, that actually came on board and provided us with funds. Some contributed some of the material that is needed, things like mask, thermometer to prevent a COVID. And sex workers, through the money that they make on the industry, they're not only supporting themselves, but they also support family members, because some they are breadwinners and some they've got their responsibilities, financially to support themselves. So this has hit hard on our community, sex workers specific.
In a world where sex work is decriminalized and human rights are protected, we ask what hope they carry for the future of sex workers.
Where no one harass anyone, Will we have the freedom
where women do not have to look over their shoulders when they're walking down the streets, where when you hear footsteps behind you, you don't turn around or start walking quickly because you're scared that somebody might violate you, somebody might rape you, you might actually end up in the headlines, you might be a hashtag.